which is where you come in.
Let me get this. You think I transferred funds in order to help a criminal organization hide money from police?
I've seen your rap sheet. Long list of cybercrimes. This isn't such a stretch.
But I'm telling you, I'm out of the game. I don't run scams no more.
Surveillance photo of you converting cash into Bitcoin, which you then transferred to an offshore bank account.
Wait a minute. I think I know what's going on. That coronavirus charity. Yeah, see, I got this email from a charity that helps patients recovering from COVID-19. And seeing how I'm trying to change my ways, I decided to help them out.
How philanthropic of you. Usually involving
They wanted me to do wire transfers for them. Different companies would wire donations to my bank account. I would withdraw the money as cash and convert it into Bitcoin, which I then wired to a separate account. Wait a second. This was all a scam, wasn't it?
Afraid so. You're what we call
a money mule. Oh, God, how could I be so stupid? I knew I should have called them to verify what they were telling me. I think part of the reason I took the bait was because they started me out running menial tasks, like going to the store to check on the price of face masks. They said it was to report price gouging.
They were testing your responsiveness. A common first step in schemes like this.
Not long after, they had me open a bank account in my name, and they deposited money in there. They said it was from donations made by companies wanting to help people.
But really, it was money they stole
I knew
from
I should have
companies
called them to verify
using
what they were
email
telling
account
me.
takeover or some other
I
hacking
think
method.
part of the reason I took the
They
bait was
probably
because
also had
they
you open a
started me out
Bitcoin
running
wallet
menial tasks,
as a secure
like
place to
going
hold
the
your
store
Bitcoin.
to check on the price of face masks. I would withdraw
said
the
it was
funds
to
they
report
wired me,
price
then
gouging.
feed the cash into
They
the
were
Bitcoin
testing your
ATM, and once it was converted to
A common first
cryptocurrency,
step in
I
schemes like
wired
this.
it back to them. Not long
To a
after,
clean,
they had me open a bank
untraceable
account in my
account.
name. And
You
they
know, a lot of
deposited
mules
money
get
in
tricked
there.
into money
They said it was
laundering,
from...
but some of them are complicit. They know what's going on. You sure you had no idea?
I promise. Like I said, I've cleaned up my ways.
No evidence of serial accounts, and his emails are clean.
See? Told you! I'm innocent!
Then who's behind the mule ring?
This guy, Louis Callahan.
Louis did this to me?
I take it you two know each other?
Yeah, he's my friend. Correction, was my friend.
Tricking your friend into being your money mule. Pretty low way to treat a guy.
You got that right.
Any idea where we might find this Louis? I'm anxious to have a word with him.
That makes two of us. Donations made by companies wanting to help people.
But really, it was money they stole
I knew I should have called them to verify.
using
I think
hacking
part
method.
of the reason I took the
They
bait was
probably
because
also had
they
you open a
started me out
Bitcoin
running
wallet.
menial tasks,
As a secure
like
place to
going
hold
the
your
store to
Bitcoin.
check on the price of face masks. I would with
Louis? I'm anxious to have a word with him.
that makes two of us.
According to FBI officials, cybercrimes have tripled amidst the coronavirus pandemic. Many crimes have taken the form of money mule schemes, which trick people into moving stolen money in order to hide it from law enforcement. Money mule schemes are frequently disguised as charity groups.
I knew I should have called them to verify. I think part of the
They probably also had you
Do you
open
come
a
across?
Bitcoin wallet.
Stop right there. Hands where I can see them.
Easy. What's this all about? Money laundering? I don't even know what that is exactly.
It's the transfer of illegal funds from a dirty account to a clean one, usually involving a third party, which is where you come in.
Let me get this straight. You think I transferred funds in order to help a criminal organization hide money from police?
I've seen your rap sheet. Long list of cybercrimes. This isn't such a stretch.
But I'm telling you, I'm out of the game. I don't run scams no more.
surveillance photo of you converting cash into Bitcoin, which you then transferred to an offshore bank account.
Wait a minute. I think I know what's going on. Money that coronavirus charity. I don't even know. See,
It's
I
the
got this email from a
transfer
charity
one,
that helps patients
usually
recovering
involving
from
a third
COVID-19.
party, which
And
is
seeing
where
how
you
I'm
come
trying
in.
to change my ways, I decided to help them out.
How philanthropic of you.
They wanted me to do wire transfers for them. Different companies would wire donations to my bank account. I would withdraw the money as cash and convert it into Bitcoin, which I then wired to a separate account. Wait a second. This was all a scam, wasn't it? Let me get
Great
this straight.
so.
You
You're
think
what we call a
convert
money
funds in order to
mule.
help a criminal organization? How could I be so stupid?
I've
I
seen your
knew I
rap
should have
sheet.
called them to
Long
verify
list
what
of
they were
cyber
telling me.
crimes.
I think part of the reason I took the bait was because they started me out running menial tasks, like going to the store to check on the price of face masks. They
How
said it was to
philanthropic
report
of you.
price gouging. They wanted me to
They were
do
testing
wire
your
transfers for them.
responsiveness.
Different companies would
A
wire
common first
donations
step
to
in
my
schemes
bank
like
account.
this.
I would withdraw not long after they had me open a bank account in my name. I then wired to a deposited money in there. They said it was from donations made by companies wanting to help people.
But really, it was money they stole from companies using email account takeover or some other hacking method. They probably also had you open a Bitcoin wallet as a secure place to hold your Bitcoin.
Yep, I would withdraw the funds they wired me, then feed the cash into the Bitcoin ATM, and once it was converted to cryptocurrency, I wired it back to them.
To a clean, untraceable account. You know, a lot of mules get tricked into money laundering, but some of them are complicit. They know what's going on. You sure you had no idea?
I promise. Like I said, I've cleaned up my ways.
No evidence of serial accounts, and his emails are clean.
See? Told ya! I'm innocent!
Then who's behind the mule ring?
This guy, Louis Callahan.
Louis did this to me?
I take it you two know each other?
Yeah. He's my friend. Correction, was my friend.
Tricking your friend into being your money mule. Pretty low way to treat a guy.
You got that right.
Any idea where we might find this? Louis? I'm anxious to have a word with him.
That makes
I knew it.
two of us.
I think part of the I think part of the reason I took the bait was because they started me out running menial tasks, like going to the store to check on the price of face masks. They
How
said it was to
philanthropic
report
of you.
price gouging.
I take it you two know each other?
Yeah. He's my friend. Correction, was my friend.
Tricking your friend into being your money
Okay,
mule.
welcome back. Now
Pretty low way
let's
to treat a guy.
take
You
the
got that
questions.
right.
Any idea where we might find this? Louis?
Okay, so we have our
Have a word
first
with him.
question. True or false?
Makes
Money laundering is illegal and carries severe penalties in most nations. We have A false, B true. So money laundering is illegal and carries severe penalties in most nations. We have false and then true. What is the correct answer?
Think part of the reason
True.
I took the bait was because they started me out running.
Any idea where we might
So
find
question number
this?
2, another
Louis?
true or false. Okay, so we have our
Have a
first
word with
question.
him.
Your money true or by false? Posting as a genuine charity. Laundering is illegal. We have carries severe penalties false in most. And then we have true. We have A false, B
True.
scammers can. So okay. Money laundering is illegal and carries severe penalties. Question number 3. If you false and then receive an email requesting you to provide a donation for charity, you should
True.
A. Always scrutinize emails asking for donations or help another with managing donations. So we have our first question. Your money only donate to the charity as a genuine support a good cause. You have carries severe penalties. False in most a reply email providing a personal and financial
True.
information like a social security money laundering is illegal and the last option click on question number even if it comes from an unfamiliar email an email requesting you to provide a donation for charity. You should
True.
A. Always should I take it again? As the question I'm
Hey,
asking for help
hey,
with managing the needs. So we have our first two only donate pilot tracking activity
scrutinize
that
all
we get
emails.
scrutinize or emails. Okay. And then the last question, true or false? Scammers often leverage major disasters such as COVID-19 to take advantage of people. We have false and then we have true.
True.
Yeah. All right, we had everything correct. Now let's move back to our seminar for today. Today's resource person will be in the person of Ezekiel Asamoah, and he will be presenting on risk management and privacy. So, Ezekiel, if you are ready, the floor is yours. Hello, Ezekiel.
Thank you, Mr. Ntompe. Um, as mentioned, my name is Ezekiel Asamoah, and I want to welcome you again to today's cybersecurity seminar. First off, we have to establish what exactly is risk and what exactly is privacy, and why we want to actually manage those two things. So, next slide, please. Simply put, risk will be the likelihood of harm to an organization and the various um, the various the various components that make up the organization, whether it's the financial branches, every branch of the organization, and then the potential damage it could do. Then privacy having would also mean having matters or data that is either free or protected from um, publicization or disclosure. The reason that we want to do that is because we want to ensure the organization's continuity. We want to ensure that their financial prospects are also maintained so that we can also so that they can also pay us for our work. Next slide. So in order to manage risk, you would have to frame, you would have to assess, respond, and then monitor. In most companies, in order to do this, would have a risk management framework and process. Now, there are different types of risk management frameworks depending upon what you want, the risk you want to cover. There's that's why it's dependent upon the branch. So there will be cybersecurity risk framework, financial crime. There's risk management frameworks for AI, different kinds. But we will be focusing on cybersecurity risk frameworks, as well as privacy risk frameworks. They are since they are their aims and objectives and the methods they go about preventing data breaches, as well as allocating resources, are very similar, with differences being mostly in terms of communication and severity. We'll be treating the two as one. Next slide, please. So, risk framing. Risk framing is in essence evaluation, which is different from assessments, where you would determine what kind of risks that you are likely to face. This will be Are you likely to face an attack from script kiddies? What kind of um, are you likely to receive attack from third party companies? Are you likely to receive attack from social engineering? What kinds of attacks would you be um, more prone to as a company? And what kind of resources will you allocate to sort that, to prevent that? Which, and also the prioritization, which resources are more important? Are you going to be protecting the data on the cloud server? Will you be training the employees? Will you be creating increased ID cards to manage entry into the the place of work or the place of business? All those are different depending upon what you would handle first in case of to prevent against data breach. And in case of a data breach, those are some of the measures um, you could potentially put in place, which also feeds into the next point, which is resource allocation, because all of these processes involve um, time and money. So which of them would be the most resource efficient that would net you the the most potential protection with the least amount of money spent? And then you would move on to the other requirements, which is, are these protections that I'm putting in place, do they comply with legal requirements that are legal requirements, um, other structural requirements for does me putting in place scanners go against county law, state law, depending upon where you are and where your place of business is located? That could also um, pose a potential threat to your business, depending upon what measures you intend to undertake. Next slide, please. So we would then move on to risk assessments. This will also be similar to evaluation, but in this case, you would determine what exactly are threats, which are individuals and organizations which are likely to attack you based on what kind of business that you are doing and the scope of your business, what kind of information they are most likely to go after. And vulnerabilities which would be um, vulnerabilities will be inefficiencies or flaws in your own software. For example, the plugins which you use, are they secure? Are they giving permissions which are over what they are expected to do? Are they also vulnerable to encoding and embedding? Are you able to put scripts in them so that they also perform an additional function which was not intended? And then impact. What kind of damage is this going to do? What kind of resources will be lost? What kind of loss will the company incur as a result of this, as a result of the data breach? Because not all threats, not all vulnerabilities will give you the same impact. So this is important in order to assess the likelihood, sorry, that you will be impacted and what kind of impact you would do, and what kind of measures you would put in place. All right. So in order to be able to make sure that that your risk management policies are working properly, that they are being put in place you've been able to, after you've done your threat assessment, after you've already established your framework. At what time will you be able to maintain these um, maintain these things that you've done, maintain the systems, update them, whether it's um, time that time and resources you have to put in place in order to um, update and then also upgrade, because times are changing. Hackers are also trying to hack the current systems and trying to also put in place measures to be able to deal with future systems. So once there is a new system that is coming out that works better or covers more ground than previous systems, it will be more advisable to upgrade to them. Now, you would also have to consider what exactly the cost benefit is to you, because no, because not all information is the same. You would want your business to be able to continue, but it doesn't make sense to put on um, for example, a state-of-the-art security system with a, a small business where the cost to maintain said business is actually higher than than what you would make, or the cost that you would or the cost that you would incur is higher than your profits. So that would also go into the upgrading. Similar example, there are other examples of risk frameworks that exist currently. For example, the NIST cybersecurity, ISO 31 31,000, COBIT 5, FAIR. There's quite a few of them that exist. So you would have to actually look through each one to and determine which of them is best for your company, because they would also those existing frameworks have in place structures to be able to handle changes in regulations, changes in regulatory requirements, changes in training, changes in threat landscapes, which basically is the threats, the vulnerabilities, and also the impacts. So you would have to identify which of them actually fits best with your business and with your structural and hierarchical framework. There are a few things that you could possibly do to also enhance your own cybersecurity, or enhance your own privacy, to enhance your own, how do I say this? Your own readiness to deal with data breaches. So one thing is AI automation, which would actually set your scanner to scan at regular intervals, set your system to be able to eliminate threats that have a higher likelihood of compromising your data. And then you would also have to look at the lower agency threats by yourself, because one thing um, that we've established that is that machines also have the capacity to make errors. They can have false positives as well. So they would indicate things that may not be there, that are either patched out. They would also indicate things that may not possibly happen. So you would still have to look over look over the reports from the software. They could even potentially delete certain drivers that are essential to your software, to the operating capacity of your software. So you would also have to manage that within your system. The upside though is that it detects threats faster, usually, because you would actually have to manually scan everything, open all the different applications and scan and then remove them. Whereas um, your AI can do all of that within within, let's say, 5 seconds, and scan everything. Whereas you would take probably like about 15 to 30 seconds to scan everything and generate the reports and send it to the higher ups. Now, the next thing you could do is to maintain the cloud, because even though it is a cloud, you have its server based, have a physically based server. So you would actually want to have in place protections, security, deterrence, for for that cloud server. And you would also want to have your cybersecurity to monitor the data that goes in, that goes out, the various entry channels, whether it be email, whether it be authentication requests, whether it be um, whether it be um, malicious hackers that intend to use backdoors that you have left in your own software to be able to um, adjust the code. Then you would also have to find ways of managing that within the cloud. Another thing you could do is that in creating the software, in establishing the framework, you would also initiate pen testing and incident response plans. Whereas which would also be when the testing is done, you would encourage your various cybersecurity teams to be able to undertake certain actions, to man certain posts in order to mitigate or counter the risks. So one thing um, one thing that's very important that I haven't covered yet would be um, the response to data breaches and response to cybersecurity attacks. Um, there are three main things you could do as your response once you are, for whether this be during um, pen testing, whether it's during an actual attack, whether it's in your incident response plan. There are three main uh, goals that you can, or three main objectives that you can actually establish. You could either mitigate, or you could mitigate by yourself, you could remediate by yourself, or you could actually just transfer ownership. In which case, the transfer of ownership would mean that you relinquish responsibility for protecting your own data and hand that over to a third party company. The issue with that is that you have to make sure that that third party company is coming in with their own data protection, with their own security enhancements in order to prevent your data from being lost or leaked, and to prevent also their data from being lost or leaked. So that also means that the third party company has a higher responsibility, and you can hold them to that. What you would also want to do if you are doing this as yourself, as the parent company, would be to mitigate the effects of a data breach. In which case, the I got breached via this plugin. what by a certain plugin, what data does this plugin have access to? How can I make it harder for a malicious hacker to be able to um, obtain more information via said plugin or via related plugins in order to maintain um, my data's confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility to my main consumer base, as well as the people, as well as the higher ups within the organization. Another thing would be um, remediation, whereas you've already been breached, you've lost your data, but then there are still ways and there are still means to get that data back in order to put the organization back into working order, and to be able to in order to be able to maintain consumer relations, which would also be a struggle once your data has been breached, because you still have to report it. So there's also that aspect which you would have to consider in risk management. All right. So I think that once you've established your framework, you've done your due diligence in order to maintain your data and to prevent it from being breached, to also maintain privacy. I believe that all things considered, you would have a better system that is more able to handle risks and threats within the security landscape, within the cybersecurity landscape. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Please, if you have any questions, you can ask them. And then, hello. Please, any questions for our resource person?
No, for me.
So I have a quick question. So ultimately, threat, which is universal, which nobody can control, plus the vulnerability of the organization equals to risk, correct?
In a way,
Hello?
being that the threats plus the vulnerability is involved in the risk, but it is not absolute. Risk would come from threats, risk would come from vulnerabilities, and they can be mutually exclusive, but then they can also be, they are not mutually exclusive, but they all contribute to risk.
Okay, so let me understand this. What I'm trying to tell you is there'll always be a threat, but without a vulnerability, there'll be no risk. Risk is the result of the vulnerability of the subject and the threat which exists no matter what. There's always threat. There's always, just like in healthcare, every medication, regardless of what it's supposed to cure, has a side effect. Every single medication. It's just prescribed because of the lesser of two evils. If you take Tylenol for too long, you have liver toxicity and it affects your liver. Every other medication, your kidney may not be able to absorb. You can end up with some form of kidney disease down the line if you abuse it. Any kind of drug, whatever it is, cocaine, name it. So what makes it, that's the threat generally for everything. So what will make it um, a risk is underlying causes. If the patient does not take drugs normally and is just on a regimen because of a particular disease and is given, say, the Tylenol for maybe a week, for example, nothing's going to happen to them. But if this patient or this person is somebody who abuses the medication, which in effect is a form of a vulnerability, then the risk or the side effects take place. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
All
There
right.
will always be threats, but without the vulnerability, there will be no risk. So the main agenda of the risk management is to mitigate the vulnerability because the threats are there. It's just it's gonna be just there. So their main um, agenda for threat is to find a loophole or a vulnerability to attack, and then that becomes a risk. So what we are trying to do here, or what you're trying to explain to us, is how to mitigate the organization's vulnerability. Because the less vulnerable you are, the more difficult it is for a threat to become a risk. Do you understand me?
I
Yeah.
agree with what you're saying.
Okay, so that's all
You-
I'm saying. The whole purpose of risk management is to mitigate the company's vulnerability. You can never do anything about threat. Threat
Mhm.
is there. Can you take all drunk drivers off the road? No. Can you take all the drug users off the road? No, because drugs and alcohol and depression impair the driver's ability to focus and drive safely. So you, the other driver, have to be focused. You have to watch out for the way other people are driving next to you. Can you always avoid them? Absolutely not. However, if you stay vigilant, you can minimize that threat out there, the threat on the road. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
if you drive within the speed limit, you are not distracted with by your cell phone and you focus, by the grace of God, you'd go and come home safely. However, if the threat, which is the other driver who's going through his own thing on the road, is doing his thing, and you are also distracted by, I mean, your cell phone, conversations, not looking at the road, not looking around you, you make yourself vulnerable to the threat that already exists on the road.
Mhm.
You see the analogy? So
Uh,
now, with that threat, and your compromised vulnerability, it becomes a risk.
mhm.
And then not only the two of you, collide, but other people around you suffer from that. So risk is something that affects more than just the organization that ends up has the vulnerability. It affects a wider range. It affects people. Let's say a company like Microsoft, there's a vulnerability and they get there's a risk at the end of that because there's vulnerability and there's a threat. Guess what? Microsoft is an organization, right? However, we the users, we those of us who use Microsoft Office, all of us will have some pinch of that risk because Microsoft, we benefit from Microsoft. So as much as the companies was what was attacked, we all share in the risk. The shareholders, people who have stock of Microsoft, also share in the risk. Were they there when Microsoft was becoming vulnerable for the threat to happen? No. However, risk is very grave and very huge in that once it happens, it doesn't only affect the intended targets in the organization, it affects other institutions and organizations connected to the one that it was targeted at. Thank you.
Thank you. While I also agree with everything you've said, you've also brought in a very important point, which is risk scale. In which, for example, if maybe like one computer within the organization isn't working, depending upon what exactly that computer is, whether it's just a computer that you possibly use to enter data for a short period of time, it wouldn't pose as high of a risk as, for example, agents voicemails to a CEO of a company being being leaked out. While I also agree with your points that the consumer base does share in the risk, in that they would also lose access to the software that the organization has developed. They would also lose access to any critical data that they that they have put into the system. Whether depending upon the data that it is, it can easily be reproduced. It can easily be prevented from. It can easily be gotten back. But the fact that that initial loss of data is there, it also reduces confidence within the company. You also mentioned about other branches or other people that are being other companies that are being affected, people companies that have contracted, for example, Microsoft, to be able to use their software. That's why the point of data, making sure that they also have their own security protocols, their own methods of preventing against data, their own frameworks already built in, so that they can also protect the data that you've given to them, in addition to you protecting your own. But another thing that is there is that we're also dealing with software. At this, as far as I'm aware, there is no software that does not have the ability to be um, hacked. So at some points, you would have to accept the risk and just monitor that particular vulnerability that that software has in order to make sure that it doesn't get hacked, in which case you would have to employ mitigation from that end. That would be what I have to say regarding the points that you brought up.
Please, any submissions? We can probably add up to what our resource person has said. If anyone else have a submission, please, you can feel free to let us know. We are all learning from, you know, about risk management. So if you have something else to tell us, please feel free to. Okay. Kennedy, do you want to say something?
No, no.
Okay. So just as Ezekiel and then Zila has said, you should also know that there are two main types of, let's say, there are types of risk. So risk can come from different places. So you have to know that risk is whereby threat and vulnerability come together. Then you get a risk whereby people are able to, threats are, let's say, hackers are able to exploit vulnerabilities. So when the hacker, who is a threat, exploits the vulnerability, which can be the fact that the app hasn't been updated, weak security and things, then you know that there's a risk. Okay, so that can be a risk. Risk can also be the fact that natural disasters can also be a risk, can also be an external risk. So when we are looking at it from the point that it can be hackers, it can be criminals, we can also look at the fact that we also have natural disasters that can also disrupt our operations and destroy our physical assets. Okay. So I think that brings us to the end of today's seminar. And I would like to thank Ezekiel for this presentation, and then to all our attendees, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And before you guys leave, I would like to announce that our organization is offering a 4-month cybersecurity class course designed to strengthen your online defense. Now, this course is led by industry experts, and this course covers fundamental principles and advanced techniques in cyber defense. You will learn to detect cyber threats, like we said, strengthen networks, and protect sensitive information, all from the comfort of your homes and at your own pace, even on weekends. Here is what you can expect from our comprehensive 4 month training program. You will get a thorough preparation for industry standard certification exams to enhance your credentials. This course also comes with assistance in tailoring your resume to meet employers' needs. You also get mentorship from industry professionals, networking opportunities, and access to collaborative projects. We also offer interview preparation and support for newly hired individuals. Okay, so enroll in Soft Afrique Cyber Security Plus course today to gain the knowledge and skills needed to stay ahead of cyber threats. You can visit our website portal.softafrique.net to learn more and secure your spot. Your digital security journey starts here with Soft Afrique. And also, don't forget to subscribe, follow, and connect us with our various social media platforms such as our LinkedIn page, our Facebook accounts, our Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Join us here next week and every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. That is 4 p.m. GMT. Thank you all once again. And then we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.